The advantages of asexual reproduction can be classified in two categories. The parental genotype is perfectly copied and transmitted to the offspring, which confers genetic and non-genetic advantages to the offspring. Or sexual reproduction is a reliable and economical method of producing offspring. When the entire genotype is transmitted from parent to offspring without any recombination, the offspring is simply an identical genetic copy or a clone of the parent. Compared to sexually reproducing individuals, a single parent individual transmits twice as many genes through clonal than through sexual reproduction. Clonal reproduction has a mathematical advantage over sexual reproduction. 2 is more than 1. Moreover, clonal offspring is identical to the parent. And if the environment is good for the growth of the parent, it will be good for the growth of the clonal offspring as well. Imagine that this plant here has 2 gene copies that allow for fast growth. The effect of each gene is additive. So if the plant has 2 purple alleles, it will grow twice as fast as a plant that has only 1 purple allele. If the plant reproduces sexually, the seeds will inherit one of the gene copies for fast growth from the maternal plant, but the other allele will be coming from a different parent and might not be coding for fast growth. So via sexual allofecundation, we end up having offspring that is less performant than its parent. But even if the plant reproduces through self-pollination, meaning that it will only inherit its own genes, we can have a breakdown of good gene combinations. This happens because of the chromosome recombination during meiosis. Imagine that you have a combination of genes that are complementing each other's function. If you don't inherit the 2 correct alleles of each gene, then the gene function will not be expressed. This is called gene complementation. Now, during meiosis, the chromosome recombination occurs less or more randomly along the chromosomes. And even if it is small, there is always a chance that the recombination occurs in such a way that the 2 complementary alleles are separated from one another in the recombined chromosome. Because the 2 blue alleles are not complementing each other anymore, this results in a loss of function phenotype that can be disadvantageous to the offspring that inherits this new recombined chromosome. So one of the advantages of the clonal reproduction is aligned with the philosophy, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you have a perfectly viable, functional genetic combination that favors the survival of a genotype in its given environment, why take the risk to shuffle it with sexual reproduction and lose this advantage? The other category of advantages of asexual reproduction are due to the economy and reliability of this strategy. First of all, sex avoids the need to produce males and thus waste resources in individuals that contribute very little to the creation of the offspring, but are nevertheless required. In an asexually reproducing population, each individual can reproduce without having to find a mating partner. Whereas in a sexual reproducing population, 2 individuals are required to produce a single offspring. That is twice as many individuals involved for the same outcome. Moreover, while female individuals are contributing genetic material and resources in order to grow the seeds, protect them from herbivores, and potentially disperse them further, the males are simply contributing genetic material and they're done with their involvement. Asexual reproduction thus increases the efficiency of the reproduction, especially for female individuals, and eliminates the need of the degenerate parasites, which are the males. In plants, there is an additional risk associated with sexual reproduction, the dependence on pollinators. Plants that reproduce sexually first need to attract pollinators. This means producing showy, rewarding flowers that cost energy and time, which can otherwise be invested in different structures. Moreover, If the plant produces nice and showy flowers, it might still not get pollinated because the pollinators were absent from the environment. Asexually reproducing plants, on the other hand, can produce offspring at any time, and they do not need to specially divert resources for creating reproductive structures. Vegetatively produced plants have a sort of a head start as well. They're already developed individuals capable of photosynthesis and independent growth, contrary to seedlings, which are usually fragile and highly dependent on the germination environment. Compare, for instance, the seedlings of succulents with their vegetative clones. The seedlings are small and fragile, and they will probably not be able to withstand prolonged drought, compared to the clones that have already one fully formed, functional succulent leaf that can withstand prolonged periods of drought. Moreover, when the clones rest attached to their maternal plant, the maternal plant can provide them with nutrients and other beneficial substances which cannot occur with seedlings that are dispersed far away from their maternal plant. Lastly, a single asexually reproducing plant can colonize new territories. Indeed, when a sexually reproducing plant arrives in a new habitat, in order to reproduce and spread its offspring, it needs to have mating partners and pollinators that would transfer pollen between individual plants. If the mating partners or the pollinators are not available, then the plant could simply die without leaving any offspring and the colonization would fail. Clonally reproducing plants, on the other hand, do not need this. When they arrive in a suitable habitat, they can simply continue with their vegetative growth and reproduction without the necessity of mating partners and pollinators. This is exactly what happened with Japanese knotweed, which has intensive vegetative growth, especially in the absence of its natural enemies, as is the case in Europe and Northern America. All populations of Japanese knotweed in Europe are actually a single genotype that has clonally spread throughout the entire continent.